Hi, everyone. Welcome to our series, STEM Careers All Year. My name is Jenna Grubman, and I am with First Book. I'm coming to you today from a partially sunny Florida, and excited to be here with a bunch of friends and colleagues from General Motors. We are so happy that we are able to partner with GM on this fantastic STEM series where you get to hear from professionals at General Motors who do all sorts of amazing things that use science, technology, engineering, and math in their jobs every day in different ways. So today, I'm excited to have two folks, well, actually three. My good pal Sammy is joining too, but two gentlemen who are going to share a little bit more about what they do. So before we get it started, you all are doing a fantastic job about sharing where you're from. Hi, Atlanta, Massachusetts, sunny California, but not so warm. Okay. We are so happy that you're sharing in the chat box where you're from. Please share what school name or grade level as well. We'd love to hear from you. Next to it, there is a questions and answers tab. When we come to the Q&A section of our discussion today, please click on that one and enter your questions in there. Sammy's going to be reading them to our two guests a little later on after the book reading. So we hope that you will submit your questions there. All right. So let me introduce my good friend, Sammy Sugiyama. She is with GM and she is their grant making manager. We're so excited to have Sammy again and GM as we bring all of these STEM professionals to you wherever you are. All right. I am going to turn it over to Sammy, who will introduce our two guests, and then you'll hear from them the book Whoosh, Lonnie Johnson's Super Soaking Stream of Inventions by Chris Barton and illustrated by Don Tate. All right. Keep sending in where you guys are from in the chat, and then don't forget to switch to the questions and answers tab when we get to that Q&A section. All right, Sammy, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jenna. As Jenna mentioned, my name is Samantha Sugiyama, and I work in General Motors Corporate Giving Department, which means that I am very lucky to have the super special job of working with great nonprofits like First Book and like Jenna. At GM, we're working towards becoming the most inclusive company in the world. And we know that in order to do that, we have a responsibility to make STEM education more accessible and more equitable. STEM is so important in our everyday lives. From the classrooms that you're sitting in right now to the sports that you play outside, STEM really is everywhere and in everything, which is why it's so critical that all kids like you have the opportunity to find their STEM identities. With this in mind, each month GM partners with First Book to put on these virtual STEM Career All Year events, where students and teachers can hear from GM employees of all backgrounds about their STEM experiences and listen to stories that feature diverse STEM characters. If you've watched these sessions before, welcome back. We're so excited to have you back. And if this is your first time streaming in, thank you for joining us. You're in for a real treat today. Feel free to comment in the chat if this is your first time, or if not, what books you've read with us in the past. And with that, I am so excited to be introducing our two very special GM guests. Cedric Stokes knows a thing or two about gadgets, gizmos, and even airplanes and cars. With over 27 years of engineering experience, he now holds the role of safety forensic engineer at GM. So he's basically an engineering detective. How cool is that? He joined GM back in 2015 and began his STEM journey when he left his home in Detroit, Michigan for Nashville, Tennessee, where he attended Tennessee State University. There he received his degree in mechanical engineering. Now back in the Detroit area, he and his wife of 25 years, who serves as an assistant vice principal in the Detroit Public Schools. So anybody in Detroit Public Schools, be sure to say hi to Cedric and his wife. And they make time to play football and basketball with their son, but always stress the importance of getting good grades so that he can continue to play sports. And our next guest, Theo Lavergne, is an assistant plant director at General Motors Flint Assembly, which is where they build and assemble cars and trucks. He began his career at GM as a controls engineer and has held various positions. He's originally from Louisiana, so all of you Louisiana folks, be sure to say hi to Theo, where he attended the University of Louisiana at Lafayette with a degree in electrical engineering. He's super passionate about STEM education and always actively promoting science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in his local community. He's married with 4 children, and he and his family live in Novi, Michigan. So with that, I hope you'll all join me in welcoming our 2 very special guests today. Thank you.
Well, hello, everyone. I am Cedric Stokes, and I'm happy to be here with you today. And then my counterpart, Mr. Theo Lavergne, is here as well.
All right. Yeah, I'm Theo Lavergne here. Really excited to be here. I see my good folks from Louisiana that's here with us. So I'm really super excited about being here, Sid. Really excited. More excited than most people.
And I'm representing the great state of Michigan. Born and raised in Detroit, Michigan area, and General Motors brought me back. So happy to be here with you all today. And so what we're going to do is just have a little conversation between Theo and myself, and to talk about STEM and what is STEM, right? A lot of times you hear this a lot. There's a lot of emphasis on STEM education, and STEM is science, technology, engineering, and manufacturing. So I'd like to open it up by asking Theo, what led you into a STEM profession?
I think it's interesting. Quite frankly, I didn't know what STEM was coming from where I come from early on, obviously. And then I always had a pretty strong math background, but early, so I was pretty good in math. I participated in, some of you may be familiar with the TRIO program, like where it's like Upward Bound, and then I think it's called Talent Search. And I was in that program and even got more involved with doing math, and I was good at math. And I had a teacher who, his name is Russell Richard. He's since passed, but he taught me when I was at Sunset Elementary, which is the middle school at the time, and it's still a middle school where I'm from. And I was interested in math. And then when I got to university, my thought was to be a mathematics teacher. And after my first semester, my counselor saw how well I did in math and asked me would I be interested in pursuing a degree in electrical engineering. And that's how I got to it. But always loved math, loved kind of playing with stuff. My dad was I would say a jack of all trades, a carpenter, building stuff, working in a local community, just working on people's homes and doing things like that. So always kind of around working on things and understanding how things work from that matter.
Okay, cool. Great story. Great opportunity. I'll kind of share my story in regards to STEM. I'll be honest. For me, maybe coming up, I didn't necessarily have dreams of being in STEM. I think the time I graduated from high school, there was a lot of emphasis at that time, computer science, and then started hearing a little bit about engineering. And I'm like, well, what's engineering? And typically with that, you have to be strong in science and math. And the thing with engineering is that it's a lot of problem solving. So you're constantly, so those of you, if you're doing story problems, and I remember younger, a lot of people say, I hate doing story problems. Engineering is literally always working on problems. And what engineering does for you, the study of it teaches you the process of thinking through problems, right, and understanding them. So in essence, big picture, that's what engineering is. A lot of it, too, is driven by money. I mean, be quite honest with you, if you're going into an engineering field, you can do pretty well financially, even with just having a bachelor's degree. So initially, for those of you who don't know, after you go to college, your first degree is usually your Bachelor of Science degree, if it's in a technical field. And, you come out of school, you're doing pretty well, right? So I think that's a driver. And it's technically a rigorous degree. So it's not easy, engineering specifically, which Theo and I are talking about. But I think when you talk about science, technology, engineering, manufacturing, there are so many different things that you can do. We just happen to both be in the automotive sector, but engineering is also very, very flexible. I mean, as stated, as Sammy stated in the presentation for myself, I've had an opportunity to work in automotive, work in aviation, in different areas. So it's a very good field to go into. So that's kind of my driver was a lot of time was the money and the career opportunities. You had a lot of opportunities for internships and things like that. So if I'm going to go to school, I want to have a return on my investment. So, but it's been very good to me, and I'm so thankful and blessed to do it. So on a lighter note, I see that you have a very beautiful family here. So would you like to, introduce us to your family, if that's okay?
I can. So if you look at the center picture with us a little dressed up, maybe, and if it's going from left to right, my son, Cameron Ivory, just recently graduated from Central State University and will be pursuing a degree in physical therapy or a doctorate degree in physical therapy. Then right on side of him is my daughter, Corinne, who is 14 years old in 8th grade. And then in the front of my wife, I'll talk about her last, is our 5-year-old, Karis, who's in kindergarten. And then to the left of me is Kristen, who's 16-year-old and a junior in high school. And then in the middle is my wife, Anna. Anna, I typically call the MVP. She's the most valuable player. She kind of keeps us together and makes sure that we're doing all those things we need to do as a family and keeping us aligned for the most part.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful family, a beautiful family. If you could go to the next slide, I'd like to share a little bit about myself. Again, everyone, my name is Cedric Stokes. I have been working for a little while, mid 90s. I'm sure some of you weren't even born yet, but that's okay. So I'm a graduate of Tennessee State University, which is in Nashville, Tennessee, as stated. Tennessee State is a historically Black college. So I left Detroit, went to Nashville, one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. I don't know if you saw a couple of weeks ago, the Grammys were on. Tennessee State, our band, won a Grammy. So we're the first Black HBCU and or predominantly white band to ever win a Grammy. So I was exceptionally excited about that. Nugget, Oprah Winfrey went to Tennessee State. So we have some pretty famous alums as well. Detroit fan, that's what this old English D. I'm sure we have people on the phone from all over the country. My Tigers have been terrible, as well as the Pistons, but the Lions are coming up, we think. So I'm a Detroit fan. So that's what the old English D signifies. The picture to the top right, that is me at work with my son Colin. I only have one. I'm not as fortunate as Theo, so I've got one. He is a 13-year-old in the 8th grade, and he really enjoys playing football and play basketball, and we're having negotiations in regards to going forward with football. I'm trying to say, hey, man, STEM does well for you, too. You don't have to hurt your body. But, I know a lot of you all probably love football, and, you just saw the Chiefs beat the Eagles. So I don't know how many Eagles fans versus Chiefs fans we have on the phone or on the call. But nonetheless, football season's over. The picture here down in the middle is with my wife. My wife's name is Tony. We've been married since 1996, so this is 27 years, and I'm thankful to have her. She's originally she's from the South, so we met at school. She's from Memphis, Tennessee, and she serves as an assistant principal right now in Detroit Public Schools. It's a K-8 school, so it's Nolan Middle Elementary School in Detroit, Michigan. And so this is us at a Lions game. So family is very important to me, outside ventures. And I'll share something with both of us. Theo and I don't know how familiar a lot of you are with fraternities and sororities, but Theo and I are fraternity brothers. We're a member of Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated. It's the first Black collegiate fraternity for African-American men. And so in our fraternities, we don't just stop in college. We just keep it going. So we are very happy to be here with you all today. And academics and scholarships is something that is very, very important to us. And it's something that the reason we're here today is we want to give back and uplift because we've been blessed immensely. And we want to make sure that we do that in return to you all. So we're so happy to be here with you all today. So,
hey, Sid, I just got to make one comment, man. Hey,
yes, sir.
For all my people from Louisiana, man, we part of the Who Dat Nation, the Saints, yes. Baby. We coming back. We're going in. We're going in, man.
Absolutely.
A little down here, but we up.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. And Louisiana, went to New Orleans for Essence Fest last year. It was fantastic. So, let's see. Were there any other? So, Theo, relative to your job, what does an assistant plant director do or plant manager do?
Okay. Just to start, I started in controls. I think Samantha talked a little bit about that. So controls engineering, like you said you can do a lot of different things in manufacturing or in engineering. So when I graduated with my electrical engineering degree, my original job was in controls engineering. And I always related to, I was doing a lot of automation at the time with controls, where it was robotics, programming machines to run and doing those type of things. And I always thought about it. It became almost like it was almost so much fun to me because it's kind of like a video game. So you're trying to make the program run the way you want to run, work the way you want it to run, and run more efficiently from that perspective. So it really was really intriguing to me because obviously growing up, we played video games. People, we started with Nintendo. People may not know what Nintendo is, but it was always one of those things. So for me, just starting out in controls gave me that it even encouraged me more from a thirst perspective on how I approached engineering. So it was a whole lot of fun for me, and it's still a lot of fun. But then as I progressed, I moved over to the leadership side of the business, where I was running manufacturing and having more people working for me and working in the manufacturing side where I was leading people. And quite frankly, I moved a lot of different locations. I left Louisiana. I was in Shreveport. I left Louisiana, Shreveport Assembly, and I went to Oshawa, Ontario, which is close to Toronto. And I was part of the team that relaunched the 2010 Camaro, if you remember when the Camaro came back. And then after that, I just did different things in operations, as I say, operations, which is production, and some engineering things moving forward. And then now I'm in the plant, if you're familiar with heavy duty pickup trucks. So all of the heavy duty pickup trucks that we build for General Motors is the plant that I'm in, and I'm the assistant plant director. So for me, I'll run the entire operation for heavy duty pickup trucks. So all of the production folks, primarily all the engineering folks, everybody falls under me as we work together to produce heavy duty pickup trucks. And it's pretty interesting because we have 50% of the market share these days. So it's a pretty high intense job. It's a lot of fun, but it's always something interesting going on when you're producing 50% of heavy duty market share for the whole world. So it's really cool.
And everyone, I want to translate. Theo has a very hard job. He loves it. But he has a lot of responsibility, and he has a lot of people that reporting to him. And so we're very proud of Theo and his accomplishments, and he's fantastic. So I'm so happy to be able to talk with him today. My journey is a little different. I've worked at a number of different companies. So out of school, I worked for the consumer electronics industry. So I lived in Indiana, rotated, went to Ohio, Columbus, Ohio area, moved back to Michigan. And so I worked for Chrysler actually for a number of years. And then I left the automotive industry. In this market, sometimes the industry goes up and down, and had an opportunity to leave. And then I moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Then I was in Dallas, and I was working with American Airlines. So that was a totally different industry. So that's, as I talked about, having engineering or STEM backgrounds gives you more flexibility. So I know a lot of you are very young, but as you think about jobs and the ability to move and have flexibility, engineering allows that, because it's not just automotive. You can do consumer electronics, you can do aviation, you can do video controls. There's so many different areas, and there's so many different options in that field. And basically, we build stuff and we make America go. So, always remember that. So coming to General Motors has been fantastic. My dad actually worked at GM for 40 years. He worked in one of our manufacturing plants. And so that influenced me to say, hey, you know what, ideally, I'm coming back home. I came back to Michigan in 2012, and what was a driver was, now I want to go back home. And as far as having support and things of that nature. So it really was a good decision for me and my family. And coming to GM, I'm very happy here. I'm able to just be me, to grow. They really value leadership. The portion about being the most inclusive company in the world is true. I happen to have an opportunity to work on diversity, equity, inclusion, which is a real part of what GM does. It's not just lip service. It's really striving to be the most inclusive company, which matters. As you can both see, Theo and I are both, African American and typically minorities, but we're valued here. So for Theo to be in that position is a great accomplishment. But he's not there just because he's Black. He's there because he's outstanding at what he does. And I'd like to think the same for me. Being a safety forensic engineer is really good. And you are an investigator. We get what's called cases, and we do the initial forensic. So you hear a lot about that with, when you watch television and stuff like that. Some of you teachers and educators with LA Law and those kinds of films. But we really triage cases. Hey, this happened. Hey, my wheel fell off, or my windshield wiper isn't working. We get those cases, and then we look at those and say, okay, is this a safety case? Because we really care about our customers. We do. There was an ignition switch thing that happened to GM in 2014, and it really dictated how we do business. Safety is very important to us. So I'm happy to be a part of that, because at the end of the day, when your parents are driving or your spouses are driving, we want to make sure that they are safe. No one here at General Motors intentionally tries to cut corners or anything like that. We care about safety because that's paramount of everything that we do. So it's great working here at General Motors. Hopefully one day some of you on the phone will grow up to be GM engineers and leaders as well. And hopefully from hearing this conversation today, you'll be motivated to consider a STEM career, because it can lead to a really good lifestyle. Right. Let's see. Theo, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience today?
No, I think we'll talk a little bit after the book. I think you put a lot of it very well, Cedric. I think everything that you outlined from a perspective of, even, you talk about money, but those are the things that, quite frankly, anybody who gets a degree in the STEM field instantly has the opportunity to change the trajectory of their life. So, I know we probably shouldn't just talk about money, but it is important, and it is important from a lifestyle perspective. Very true.
Yep. So this time, I think we've had a pretty good discussion here, Theo, and it's time for the book. So this picture, what you all are viewing, is a picture of we'll be talking about Mr. Lonnie Johnson. And if you're familiar with the Super Soaker water gun, he invented it. So that's Mr. Johnson in the middle, and that is me to the far right. We at General Motors, we have every Black History Month, we have a General Motors African Ancestry Network, which is our employee resource group. We have a Black History Month program, and that takes place every February. And Lonnie Johnson happened to be one of the honorees at the program, so had an opportunity to take a picture with him. And so that's what that picture is. So again, these are some other of my friends that were there. The young lady in the blue, that is not my wife, very good friend of mine. Her name is Crystal Wyndham. She's an executive director here at GM as well, I believe in industrial design. So a good friend of mine, meets some of our other friends as well. So it was a pleasure meeting Mr. Johnson. And so again, like to emphasize that GM is a great place to work. STEM is a really good field. So at this time, we will turn it over to Theo, and he will read to you.
I think I'm gonna get me a Super Soaker. They fun toys.
Yeah, I'm motivated. It's just too cold in here now. Those in Florida.
I know. I'm gonna get one, man.
Yes.
I had never heard of Lonnie Johnson before, so it was super exciting to learn a little bit more about him, and super, super cool that you had the opportunity to meet him, Cedric. Had you known his story before you had met him?
Yes, I was familiar with it. I had always heard that that there was an African American who came up with the Super Soaker, so I was familiar. I didn't know the backstory, so it was a pleasure meeting him, and for GM to honor him that way. So it was a pleasure and an honor to meet him.
So what was that like for you, having known his background and that story and that experience?
Well, I mean, it's good when when you read and to see a history fact or somebody you can reach out and touch and go, wow, like this person really did that. Because when you look at it in a book, relative, and a lot of historical figures, we read about them, but they've deceased. But to have someone living and breathing, you can ask them stuff. Now, I don't have a lot of time with it because a lot of people are trying to take pictures, but to have someone physically in your presence, like, man, you did that, huh? So that was really inspirational to want to hear that, and to understand too that in most instances you're gonna have setbacks. Most people that have success, they're gonna have setbacks. That's part of life. So think about if he said, I'm leaving my apartment, or I don't have making any money, and he just stopped. We wouldn't have the super soaker today. So I admire his ability to keep pushing forward even when it's hard, right? And I would suggest that kids too, or students that are listening to this, yes, there are going to be some hard times. There are going to be some difficult tests. There are going to be some things that your teachers give you may not totally understand or want to do, but they're doing it for your own good, and you push through it anyway. If you have a setback, ask for help and come back. Don't quit.
That's awesome. Definitely. And as a reminder to all of our teachers and all of our student friends, be sure to put those questions in the Q&A section of the chat, and we'll be sure to get Cedric and Theo to start answering those. It's super exciting. One that came in is, you talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but what inspired you to choose your careers, at GM specifically and in the auto industry?
Theo?
We can start with Theo if you want to kick us off, and then throw it over to Cedric.
I can start. And like I said, it's pretty interesting. Coming from where I come from, and, these kids on the phone today know what it's like to come from where I come from. And I would have never thought 20 years ago, 22 years ago, 23 or 30 years ago, when I was sitting at Grand Coteau Elementary as a 12-year-old, that I would have fast forward and be where I'm at today. So what inspired me, I think early on, like I said, I went to school to be a math teacher because I really, quite frankly, I knew what engineers were, but the only role model I had was a math teacher who I admired and I thought was pretty smart, and I thought I was good at math. So when I went to school, I was going to be a math teacher. My parents I come from humble beginnings, and like I said, and my parents were invested in me doing well and at least being able to get a college degree. So, and then, I did well my first semester in college, and my counselor saw something in me that said, hey, you're not only that good in math, you're capable of doing more. So it's kind of what got me into electrical engineering. And then I went to electrical engineering school, and then how I got to General Motors is, you all may have not heard about it. Some of you on the call may have. It's this organization called NSBO. It's called the National Society of Black Engineers. And I ended up going to a conference, and I got an internship. And I was fortunate enough to come to Michigan from Louisiana in the summers, two summers back to back. And that's how I got into General Motors. And then I was fortunate enough when I graduated from school, we had a plant at that time in Shreveport, Louisiana, where I went to work for General Motors in Louisiana. So that's really how I got here. It's funny, like I said, man, 30 years ago, if you'd have told me I would be in Flint, Michigan on a cold winter day, working in a heavy-duty truck plant, manufacturing heavy-duty truck plants, heavy-duty trucks, building over 1,100 heavy-duty trucks a day from a little boy in Grand Coteau, Louisiana, it just wasn't. It wasn't in the. You just don't think it's gonna happen. So it's just that's how I got here. I don't know how else to put it. Maybe I didn't answer the question well, but it's kind of how I made it to where I am today, anyway, and how I got into electrical engineering. There was somebody who saw something in me that said, "Hey, you good in math? Why don't you try electrical engineering?"
Mm-hmm. And for me, how did I end up here in Germany? Well, one, being from Detroit area, you heard about, at that time was the big three all the time. So you heard about General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler. So my dad worked for General Motors. So I think a lot of my motivation was not necessarily saying that I had to come back home when I graduated, because I went to some other places prior to. But GM's always been very good to me and my family, and helped me, quite honestly, get through college, because my dad was able to work there and help that with me. I will say, similar to Theo, that I'm blessed immensely, right, to be in this position, and I never take anything for granted. Being a safety and forensic engineer, to be at a company like General Motors, one of the best companies in the world. I mean, in regards to size, in regards to the way that we do things, the way that the vehicles that we're coming out with are phenomenal. The electric vehicles are phenomenal. And to work at a place where they value people, right? I'm very technically astute, but I'm really, and you hear this all the time, a people person. I'm really in tune with people, and to be at a company that values people, and it's not just lip service. It's quite honestly rare. I mean, all of us, adults have worked at different places, and you've had places where you feel like, hey, they really value me, and others that you're like, I'm just a number. General Motors, I don't really feel like a number. And then to be in a field that is cutting edge, you hear a lot about the Googles and the, places like the Amazons and whatnot, but this is a great place. And we do a lot of, very technical things here in regards to the vehicles that we drive. There's a lot of automation, a lot of things that go into vehicles as we move from just regular engines and things to electric vehicles. There's a lot of technology, battery technology that goes on. But the initial question, why GM, for me, is because I was exposed to it at a young age. I'm from this area, and automotive is huge here in the Detroit area. So, and then going into engineering, it was just a nice marriage for me. And I've had an opportunity to do some really cool things and meet a lot of great people. And it's a lot to, when you hear engineering, there is so many aspects of it. Even as Theo's talked about being in the plant, there's manufacturing engineer, process engineers, quality engineers. And there's so many different aspects of that. So that was what brought me to General Motors, was just exposure to it early. And then the field of engineering was like a nice marriage.
Definitely. I also grew up in the Metro Detroit area, so I can definitely relate to having that just lived experience of knowing folks who had worked at GM and really loved it. And I'm also super grateful to be here, obviously in a very different capacity than the both of you, but definitely can feel that across the organization, regardless of role and department. Thank you both so much for sharing. We have a lot of kiddos who are curious if either of you have ever tried inventing anything. Cedric, if you want to start this one off.
Have I ever tried to invent anything? Longer work days. No, I'm just joking. Longer vacation. No, I can't say that I have. From an engineering perspective, I was on, when I was at a previous company. We have patents. I was because I worked on side air curtains, side airbags in a previous role. There we have the side airbag crash. So one of our peers was doing something with a headliner. So I was added to a patent. He wrote a patent, and we did some stuff there. So I don't know if that quite went through, but that was probably the closest to inventing something per se for me. So that's a highlight. So, Theo?
I have not invented anything. It's just funny. We talk, if anybody's seen the autonomous vehicles that drive themselves now. Yeah. And so when I was in engineering school, said you'll know this, that in engineering school, in your senior design, you have to do a design.
Yes.
So in my senior engineering project, me and my team designed a miniature autonomous vehicle. This is 20 years ago. This is way before we got to GPS and using the satellite imagery and all those things that we're using now. We used magnets embedded in the roads to smaller roads. We made roads out of the gym mats that you use, right? So the plastic gym mats, and we routed the gym mat and we put a magnet in it to guide the vehicle with Hall effect sensors that are that follow magnets, if you know what a Hall effect sensor is. I just think it's funny that, I mean, 20 years ago, we were doing it as an engineering project. It's not something that we came up with, but the idea that now, 20 years later, the automotive world as we know it, is changing over into autonomous vehicles. In fact, the truck I drive now is an super cruise truck. So, when I get on the highway, not only do I hit the cruise, I hit the super cruise, and it just takes me up the highway, and it drives up the highway, changing lanes and all that by itself. So it's just, I never created anything, but it's just like, I can remember doing that project, and I can remember the research that we did, because you had to talk about how it relates to society, and we was talking then about zero congestion and all those things, no crashes in the project. But you come now and it's like a real thing. I'm not on the team that's doing the design for autonomous vehicles, but it's just funny that I work for a company that's pushing all the chips in the middle of the table to say, hey, we're going to be the first fully autonomous company.
Wow.
It must be a really full circle moment to have worked in that in college and then be here and working in the auto industry and driving around in one. That's too funny.
Yeah, it's funny. It's just funny. It's really funny, but
life.
It's cool. I enjoy it. I love it.
That's awesome.
I would have never thought that. Actually,
never.
I would never thought even at the time that General Motors would be making autonomous vehicles.
Yeah. Who would have?
Who would have thought that, right?
The Jetsons are coming next. I know I said the Jetsons, that's above everybody's head, so Google it.
All right, so our next question is where and how do you get your positive attitude from? I think you both have a really positive attitude, so they'd love to know. Theo, if you want to start us off.
Oh, man. I'm just I think said it well, right? I'm just truly blessed to be where I'm at today. So I don't have a reason to be, frustrated or, not have positivity about, excited about what I do, excited about one opportunity to be able to be on this call today, to be able to give back, and it just, from that perspective, it just warms my heart, that children are willing to get on the call and talk about STEM with the opportunity to get on STEM. And then it's even more touching for me I went to Grand Control Elementary, so there's a lot of kids on the call from there. And it just makes me excited from that perspective. So I'm just excited to be here. And it's just who I am, really.
And I think for me, and I want to say something too, like for Theo, that you maybe get a bit emotional. I mean, to see that, to be able to come into this today, and he had no idea who would be on the phone, to kind of be able to, so you all have someone to look at, it's like, wow, he came from where we came from, and he's doing well, and to be able to give it, because that's what it's really about. And in regards to the attitude, I'm blessed. We can sit up and talk about what we don't have. I'm blessed immensely. I mean, you could always have more things, but I have my health. I'm blessed to have a job. I have a wife and a child who I love, who they have health. I live in a mindset of being half full, right, versus half empty. We can sit up and all complain about things. And as younger people who are watching this, you have your whole life ahead of you. And what is pressing you now will pass. We were all elementary, middle school kids. And at the time, you're like, oh, my God, nobody likes me. I'm not popular. I don't have this. I'm like, at the end of the day, if you have a family or someone that's supporting you, even if you are having struggles, it can get better. Keep going. Don't stop. So I realized that as you look over, if I was writing a book, as we're talking about books, and you write your book of life, and it's chapters. So when you were a toddler, kindergarten, middle school, high school, you look over that book and you may have asked for things. And just because you don't get it now doesn't mean you won't get it when you're supposed to get it. I talked to Theo. So say Theo is in a situation, he's on this call here today, and everything is conspired for him to be here today to talk to kids that he went to elementary school with, or How does that happen? So maybe he thought, well, I didn't think I was going to be in Flint, Michigan here today, but it all conspired there. So as you live life, you understand. And if you have a mindset of being thankful, and this goes out to your educators too, because you do a yeoman's job doing the work, and it's frustrating, but you're there for a reason, and we need you, and those kids need you, because you don't know what they're going through in their home life. And that's
I think what you're saying is spot on. Yeah. And I think the other thing that's, you touched it, and even in the story, if you read through the stories, it's really about a story of not giving up. When you think about what you just read this story, right? It's a story about not giving up. And I think for everybody on the phone today, right? You can't give up, right? I mean, like, you can't think, okay, I can't do it, because myself said, Samantha can tell you it can happen. I mean, I'm telling you, believe it or not, it can happen. I mean, from where you're sitting at today, somebody has to be the next people in this world that make us better. And, it's, when you sitting where you're sitting at as a, fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever grade you in, you're thinking, that can't be me, right? Because I know I was, I would have never thought engineering or any of those things. But if you take one thing from this conversation, the one thing that I want you to understand is that it could be you, because, Sid wouldn't have never thought it would have been him. And I'm telling you for sure, I would have never thought it'd have been me. But I kept trying to do better, and I kept working at it. And, even in school, right, I tell kids who are in engineering school now, they most of the time, right, people say, hey, math is hard, math is hard, math is hard. Math is hard. It's not, that's a true statement. It is hard. And science is hard. All those things are hard. English is hard. But what I can tell you is if you work at it and you focus on it and you don't ever give up, even when you make a bad grade, right? I mean, you make a bad grade, try again, go get some more tutoring, right? It's all about continuing to get yourself better, because if all of us on this call, myself, said, Samantha, Kelsey, Ms. Jenna would have said, hey, I'm going to give up, we wouldn't be where we at today. And I'm going to tell you, if you do what you have to do, and you don't give up, and you get that college degree, or you get that vocational trade, because you don't have to just get a college degree, but if you get a vocational trade, I'm going to tell you, it's going to be life-changing for you. And that's all. I mean, that's what I tell you, right? Just don't give up. I mean, there's no reason to.
Frankly. And to piggyback, everybody on the phone that's listening, you're going to have setbacks in life. Yeah. The objective is, how do you react to those setbacks? Like we just talked about the Super Bowl that happened last Sunday. One team won, one team lost. So with those losses, what do you learn from those losses? All of us that are professors have interviewed for jobs before, and sometimes we didn't get it. So you're like, I'm never going to interview again because I didn't get a job. Well, maybe that wasn't for you at that time. Maybe there's something you needed to learn in that space. Maybe you weren't ready. Sometimes you didn't get the job because you don't know what's about to happen. Okay, maybe you studied for a test and you didn't do your best. Well, does that mean, maybe that means you need to take more time to go talk to your teacher. Help me out. Get out of your way. Maybe you need to get off of Instagram and TikTok and study a little more. Sometimes you have to reflect on, did I do my best? So we're saying a lot about, you have to keep going because it gets better. But you're gonna deal with obstacles. If you're a grown up, if you're a young person, it's part of it. Nobody wins all the time. They make you think you do. And especially on social media, you might think everyone's winning. Believe it, they're not. So
I think the other thing, like you're saying, Cedric, and I think, I think sometimes you think for the teachers on the call, right? I mean, like, you are so important to us as a society and to these students on the call, right? Like, I think you all sometimes think, okay, my teacher is being hard, or my teacher is, I don't appreciate my teacher, or my teacher is picking at me, but if you think about the role of the teacher and what the teacher is there to try to inspire you and to help you get better. So just because you made that bad grade doesn't mean that the teacher don't want you to do better. You got to come back and try again, and then work on those things to make yourself better, because they are trying to make you better. I would say the most rewarding, I've never been a teacher, never had the opportunity to, but I would say the most rewarding thing for a teacher is to see you succeed. Absolutely. And I think you got to think about it in those, think about it that way. So kudos to the teachers on the call, getting these kids on the call and trying to continue to inspire our next world's leaders.
Absolutely. I think that's awesome. Thank you both. That was super insightful. I think we have time for just one more question. And before I ask that, I just want to mention that we've seen quite a few questions come in about, females working at GM and women that work at GM as engineers. And I personally am not an engineer, but have great admiration for my colleagues who are, and want to mention that there are, a lot of female engineers that both Theo and Cedric work with. And Cedric had that photo with Crystal Wyndham, who's one of our really amazing designers. She has designed some of the coolest cars that you all see out in the road. So we have some really great women and female engineers here at GM as well. But I want to close out on this.
And we need more. We need
100%.
more.
100%.
Absolutely. Yep.
But I want to close out on this question. Have either of you used a Super Soaker? And, what was your favorite toy growing up, if not a Super Soaker?
Theo, you going first or me?
I'm trying to think of my favorite toy, man. I can't think of one. I have used the Super Soaker.
Yes.
Me and my sister had quite a few battles outside with those.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're about to age ourselves with these toys. And we're about to age ourselves with these toys. So I use a Super Soaker, and my favorite, I think, toy. This is really gonna date. You guys know? Anybody know what Shogun Warriors are? Anybody heard of that? Wow. Okay, Google it. So they're like warriors. Like the arm would shoot off, and it's kind of like a large Godzilla kind of thing. So, and okay, let me bring it up. In television, Atari, ColecoVision. So those are some of my favorite things. I know my audience. So nonetheless, Google it. If you heard nothing else, Google it. I don't know if there's some seasoned teachers on the phone. You all may know what I'm talking about.
And Theo, your favorite toy growing up?
Oh man, I was trying to think. I couldn't think. The difference is we played outside a lot, so we would just create our own whatever imagination type of game. So I was maybe like the WWE wrestlers toys, playing like with the wrestling men, stuff like that. I can't even think of anything, really, to be honest with you. I like Super Soakers, stuff like that.
That's awesome. That is so fun. Well, thank you both for joining, and I want to welcome Jenna back and let her close us out. But thank you again so much for joining the both of you.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you both. It's been wonderful to hear from you.